And this episode is for leaders who didn't make the decision to implement AI, but are now on the hook for making it work.
Welcome to the Next Interview podcast. In this episode, learn how directors turn an unclear AI mandate into trust, coordinated action, and measurable results through 3 practical leadership moves.
Welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I'm Doland White. I am the host. And this episode is for leaders who didn't make the decision to implement AI, but are now on the hook for making it work. After 100 episodes, one of the lessons that stands out is organizations really rarely struggle, and organizations I've been in have rarely struggled. They still rarely struggle because of lack of ideas on ambition or new technology advances. There's always something new and shiny in technology that we're going to go do. And AI happens to be that topic in this particular podcast. And they struggle because they can't translate those into things that become coordinated action. So today we're going to focus on coordinated action. I'm going to use some notes that I use to teach with my clients. I'm going to use some random thoughts, but we're going to get together and we're going to go figure it out. In my career, one of the things that I did growing up in my career is I was a director for many years. And as the director, usually I was the guy that received stuff from up high, as we used to call it, until I was up high and realized it was not quite as high as the ivory tower I thought it was. But receive things from up high, and my job was to do exactly what I just said, which was to go figure it out. And a lot of times the things that got to me were medium rare. They weren't completely cooked all the way through. They were a little raw in the middle. For those of you that like medium rare steaks, I apologize. But they were a little raw in the middle. And so what was left on my plate was a corporate initiative that I had to go figure out, one, how we're going to do this. But then I also had to figure out how I was going to influence my team so that we would have the coordinated action to go put that together. And I call it the chewy nougat of leadership. And the chewy nougat of leadership is built around a reference with my grandpa. When I grew up with my grandfather, Paw, he loved Three Musketeers bars. And one of the things, if you ever pick up a Three Musketeers bar and you open it, it's a beautiful candy bar. It's chocolate on the outside and it's got little waves on it. And in the middle, there's a nougat in the middle. That's in the old Three Musketeers commercials. They always called it the nougat. So there was a nougat in the middle. And a lot of times as leaders, we make the mistake thinking that by creating that beautiful chocolate wrapper that goes around it, the nougat will take care of itself. And it's up to the director level, those who are in the essential middle where executive management operational is a reality. You're that chewy nougat. You have to make it taste good. It might look good, but you're on the hook to make it taste good. So we're going to talk about that today. When AI is brought down to your level, it's considered as a director's burden. And you'll hear the statement, hey, we're implementing AI. And there's a lot of reasons why companies implement AI. One of the reasons that they want to implement AI is because there's a fear of falling behind competitors. And a lot of organizations make that decision we have to do AI without having clarity around what it means from a productivity perspective, what it means from a cost reduction perspective, what automated workflows are going to be out there, what is it going to do to improve experience, both on the customer side and on the internal employee side. And so when you receive it, those particular nuances haven't been developed or fully baked. They're still medium rare by the time they get to your desk. And your job as the director in that chewy nougat role is to go figure that out. You're stuck with the 4 words, go figure it out. And it means you've got to figure out what business problems are we actually solving. There's an old nuance when I work with my clients, and I call it going on walkabout. If you really want to understand your organization as a CEO, CTO, CFO, C-umpty squad, go on walkabout. Because what you think the problem is not. So go spend time with your teams, get to know what they do, get to understand their roles in your organization, actually go spend time in their roles. If you've ever read the book, The Toyota Way, you'll see some stuff around Kaizen and those kinds of actions. But you get it as the director. And as the director, now you've got to figure out what problem are we solving? Where do we begin? What what workflows are we talking about changes when people say, hey, we're going to improve our workflows? What workflows are we talking about? Specifically, what is the authority level that I have to make changes? Who do I have to go to if I don't know what my authority really is? Who can experiment? What can we try in the domain of risk? What can I do? What's the risk tolerance around this AI implementation? And who can and who cannot enter the AI system? What do the employees need to know? There's a lot of questions that start to come out. And as you listen to this podcast today, note that in the show notes, go to the show notes for the podcast. They're on my website or on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, wherever they happen to be, the Spotify, whatever you're listening to. There will be a link, and on that link you can click the link and go download a guide that will give you some of the things that we're talking about today, and it's free. Just take it and use it for your AI implementation. But you need to answer some of those questions as they start to show up, and you'll start to discover as you're thinking through that there's a nuance around AI, and I talk with my clients around this, is that AI doesn't create leadership problems. AI actually reveals the leadership problems that exist and multiplies them. So you may start to know gaps and bumps in the plan and that direction to implement AI in the organization. It's going to reveal unclear strategy. It's going to reveal low trust. It's going to reveal poor communication, and it's going to reveal what it means for cross-functional meeting or cross-functional work inside of the body of your company. So the other thing too then is when your team hears that AI is going to be implemented, they're going to start asking questions. Is AI going to replace my role? Is probably one of the big questions. Somebody's going to raise their hand and say, hey, I just read a Forbes article, and in the Forbes article, they just laid off 25,000 people at Oracle, and Amazon is laying people off, and robots are coming. And does that mean my job gets sacrificed? And if they don't know the answer to that, they're going to check out and they're going to be retired in place. Their productivity is going to drop. They're going to go home with fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and may make a bad decision and leave your organization for the wrong reason under the wrong pretense. The other part then is there's going to be some uncertainty and doubt because they're going to wonder what they're expected to know. Am I going to be expected to know the technology already? I recently had a conversation with a client, and they were talking about the fact that in preparation for an AI implementation in their company, they gave everybody a budget so they could go buy AI. So they were buying Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, a bunch of AIs, because they're all commoditized now for about $20 a month. They all went out and they bought AI so that they could learn to write prompts without understanding the purpose for the AI or what those prompts meant, with the pretense that they could in turn know how to use AI. So when AI rolled out, they would all be prompt ready. So what are they going to be expected to know? Can they trust what it produces? There's always the disclaimer at the bottom of Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude that be careful of the information that I provide because it might not be right. So if I leverage incorrect information because AI told me it was correct, am I going to surrender to the information and use it as is? Or am I not going to trust it? Or do I go verify it with another AI? Or if I implement it, am I going to get punished and possibly terminated because I did something that was considered stupid? And then if it's going to save me time, what the heck do I do with the time that it's going to save me? And what time exactly will it save me? And if I have saved time, is it going to give the opportunity for people to just put more work on my desk? Is there going to be a drive-by, or is a corporate seagull going to show up and leave me more things to do? So all of these things are happening in the minds of the team. So you have an organization above you that said, we're going to implement AI without clarity in some of the nuances of things that you need to know as the person leading the team that's going to do the work or receive the work. And the people receiving that work are worried upwards because they're considering, what does this mean to me? Fundamentally, that is the question. What does it mean to me? So you have two things. The one thing that comes out of that is when your team is pushing back is that resistance is not a refusal to change. It's a rational response to ambiguity. So it's an indicator that you have a lack of clarity in all of the things that we've just talked about. So your job as the director, that person sitting in the chewy nougat of your organization, is to translate that information into something that's a directive, a mandate that people can understand and they can buy in on. They'll need to know, what are we approving? What are we improving? What's experiences involved? They'll need to know all of those things. And your job is to bring all of that together. Now, you can do a couple of moves. I'm going to give you a couple of moves, and for the sake of time in this podcast, just a couple simple things that you can do. And I'm going to refer to the document that you can go download that will be in the show notes. And one of the very first moves is you can translate the directive. And let me explain a little bit about what that means. You can read it in the handout, but that means is your job is to translate that AI mandate. Hey, we're going to do AI into something that is meaningful to the person who is involved in it, wherever their role is. So it's a unique conversation so that they can understand on it. And even more important, they can act upon what you're telling them. So there's clarity involved. There's a business law, right? Clarity creates confidence. So your job is to apply clarity to ambiguity and go get those answers, figure out how you're going to say them, and work with your team. So you need to be able to answer the questions around to translate the directive into what specifically is the business outcome that we're working towards. Why does that outcome matter to the company? And why does that outcome matter, even more importantly, to you? And then what meaningful progress is going to happen? And what does that progress look like? And not only that, but as we're moving forward, there's a scope of activities that we're going to do, what's in scope and what's out of scope. And then how do we make decisions around that? And finally, the last thing that you need to do in this first action, which is translate the directive, is what remains unknown. What is it that we don't know? Let's talk about some of the things that we may not know that we're going to encounter along the way so that we'll watch out for them, because we're going a place. AI is a place that we've not been for as a company. So your job is to replace that vague mandate with some understanding. Move number 2 is create the conditions. Take a moment. Translation of that AI initiative creates the clarity. And your job is to create the conditions so that people can act. That's what leaders do. We create a condition so that we can cause momentum so people can act and move confidently towards an outcome. This is where it's important for you. Where in my leadership realm, I talk about 4 pillars. I talk about trust and autonomy, communication and transparency, growth and innovation, and systems of accountability. And all of those apply to it. Now, I'm going to give you just one, which is trust and accountability. Trust is based on 4 domains. In order to successfully move forward with the AI implementation that you're working towards, you have to trust yourself that you have the capability and the capacity to do this, which means you may need to go fill some gaps, get some answers to some questions so that your self-trust grows. And you need to have trust in your team. So you need to know your team intimately, what their capabilities are, what their capabilities aren't, so that you can fill those gaps. And then on the reciprocal side, so that they trust themselves. Very similarly, they need to know that they have the desire, the capabilities, and the capacity to execute, to move forward with this, and that they in turn trust you. And they trust you because when you give the accountability and give the autonomy, to them, and they have the ability to go execute decisions, there's clear boundaries. They know what they look like. They know when to come to you. And you trust that they can move forward with little intervention. You're not going to micromanage them into the ground. So we can get into the other domains that I talk about in subsequent conversations around AI. But the most important is start with trust. And move 3, the last thing that I'll talk about in this podcast is close the loop. Look, as a director, you simply can't, you just can't receive the strategy and then carry all that ambiguity with you when down to your team. You've got to bring operational intelligence back upward. You're responsible because you are in that chewy nougat with working with your leadership team to help them understand some simple things. Your leaders need to know, and I'm going to paraphrase what's in the handout. They need to know what your teams are learning. What are we learning every day at the end of every day through this process? What assumptions are we proving incorrect? Because assumptions were made and you're receiving the assumptions which are correct and which are incorrect. Which ones are proving incorrect? The next thing you know is what governance is missing. Governance is critically important. How do we report? How do we put the boundaries? How do we measure? What capabilities or resources are needed? Where are risks emerging? And are they in alignment with the risk stance of the organization that you serve? There's multiple kinds of risk. And then the last is, what decisions require executive ownership? There are going to be a series of decisions that are going to be required for you as the leader in order to execute the AI implementation. And that AI implementation, sometimes those decisions have got to go all the way back up to the top. And you need to know where they are and what they mean. Because a lot of times when your people experience AI as something being done to or something with them, it has to be something that they can help shape, that they have a hand in, that they know the impact of. And these moves 1, 2, and 3, help you shift your team and shift your leadership into a stance where they understand what AI means to the organization and likely will multiply your success in implementing AI. The last leadership lesson, and I'm going to use my notes for this, is AI is changing quickly. You've probably heard about Moore's Law, and I'm not going to explain Moore's Law here on the podcast. If you don't know about Moore's Law, go look it up. But one of the things that's happening in AI is it's changing very, very, very fast, and the use cases are evolving. It's important that your organization becomes adaptive. As your organization become adaptive, it means that you're watching for the changes. You're not just implementing AI from a compliance perspective or as a tool. You're releasing AI in your organization as part of a coordinated movement. So directors, I'm going to give you a closing challenge. My closing challenge for implementing AI is pretty straightforward. When you go with your senior leaders to the next meeting, what is it that they ask? Be clear on what they've decided. And what are we still being asked to invent? What have they decided? And what is it that you're being asked to invent? Follow with 3 questions. Here are your questions. What outcomes are we actually trying to create? What conditions will our people need to move responsibly? What must senior leadership hear or decide before we can move forward? Those 3 questions will give you the opportunity to have that open dialogue, both up and down where the rubber meets the road inside of the body of your organization, because you're at the chewy nougat. You receive the initiative. You must decide on the initiative, what the implementation looks like, and then influence your team to accomplish it successfully so that you're all moving successfully towards a common outcome. So in closing for the podcast, today I'm going to challenge you with something. So the final thing I want to leave you with is, if AI is selected in your executive suite, it's going to be used on the front line, you have to make sure that it's safe for the leaders and safe for your team. If you as a director are expected to go figure it out, equip yourself to do more than implement a tool. It's important. Equip yourself to do more than implement a tool. Seek clarity, seek authority, seek the resources and the executive support you need for real transformation. Thank you for listening to episode 100. Look, there's 1,000 things you could be doing with your time. I do this podcast because you're here, and on my personal mission to influence and help 1 million leaders become better leaders. That's my job, is to empower leaders. 2 things. The very first thing is, if you heard a couple of things on the podcast today, I want you to transition it from entertainment to action. That means go back and listen to the podcast with a pencil and paper in hand, jot some things down, and go try them out. If you want to reach out to me and have any questions, please don't hesitate to do that. I'll give you some additional tips. The next thing is give the podcast a know, like, share, or follow. It has nothing to do with vanity numbers. It has everything to do with making the podcast available so that people can find it, can learn from it, and can share it with leaders that are facing challenges in their companies today. If we do that, we do two things. We empower 1 million leaders together. And the second thing is we increase the success of AI because it's here today. It's not going away because the current failure rate in AI implementations is massive. It's greater than 70% of AI implementations currently fail. So let's do that. I'm Doland White. I'm the host. This is the Next Interview Show, out every Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for being here. See you in the next episode.
This is Bill Oxley signing off for Doland and the Next Interview. Be sure to follow this podcast for more leadership insights every Tuesday. And share this podcast. Become a part of our mission to empower 1 million leaders.